Huh. Hey guys. Didn't see you there. Ermin here. Part-time YouTuber, full-time douche. When I started this channel nigh on over a year and a half ago, I told myself only one thing, and that is to never ever ever do one of these low-hanging fruit YouTube response videos, because let's face it, that is pretty much bottom of the barrel YouTube. But time moves on and here we are. Just yesterday, the king sim racing cheese himself, Mr. Jimmy Broadbent, did a video asking, is Automobilista 2 worth the hype? And as you guys have probably noticed over the last week, I've been pretty much hammering AMS2 with nigh on a video a day, which is probably a cause for therapy if I'm honest. If you saw his video, you could say that he was somewhat, let's say, critical of the title, which I know the community always loves to see. That being said, he actually voiced a lot of things in that video that I completely agree with, even though my coverage of the game so far this week has been disproportionately focusing on the positives, or at least trying to. So we're going to take apart a few of the things that he said over the course of that video, respond to them, and see where we lie.
Now AMS2, I think it's fair to say, I've never really been the biggest fan of. The way it drives to me, it's never really been, I don't know, I've never really clicked with it. It doesn't really feel like I would imagine the cars to feel in real life, and as a massive sim racing nerd, that's sort of what I strive for personally. I strive for the cars to feel as real as...
Ditto, me too, mate.
But it also comes with an absolute ton of physics reworks as well, and that also interests me, again, because, as I said, AMS2 has never really felt like 100% a sim to me, so anything to adjust the physics in, I'm always interested to see how they feel, and if it helps change my mind somewhat.
Pretty much exactly my thoughts too every time there's a new update. I always hope that it's gonna get ever further away from the old, the word that you guys love ever so much, SimCady world, and more into the simmy world that it came from originally.
Given that this is probably going to be an opinion video, I want to just put a little disclaimer out there and say you are completely free to disagree with my opinion. All I ask is that in the comments, try and keep it civil.
While it feels almost pointless to try and echo this for my comments section, if you guys disagree, which you're more than welcome to do, just try and keep it civil and respectful down in the comments. We always do tend to love a good conversation about sim racing physics, just without the ad hominem, please.
And given that Daytona is probably one of the more famous American circuits, I thought I'd try it around here because I've driven here a lot and I know what a prototype feels like around here.
Would that be in real life or in sim races? Usually one of the first things the community try and pull you up on, I find.
I've done a very, very slight setup change because I don't really know if the AI respond to your setup in this or not, and all I've done is just increase my final gear a little bit.
The first thing you'll notice here, mate, is that unless you've spent at least 4 months looking into the ins and outs of setting up cars on the Madness engine, you've studied the telemetry, aero maps, charts, and you've basically made it a full-time job, it just won't be enough for the community. A few small tweaks to the default setups is nowhere near enough. You see, the point of AMS2 is to begin the default setups in a place that's as far from reality as humanly possible, and your goal as the player, rather than just getting in and driving the car, is to make it drive like a car first.
Who's gonna blink first through the fast right? Neither of us, apparently.
Oh man, I confuse my left and rights all the time as well.
Somehow I'm able to get rid of the understeer by just smashing the throttle, which is an interesting technique. I wouldn't try that really in real life.
I'm super glad you picked up on this. It's something I noticed since the very earliest iterations of AMS2. Basically, if you're experiencing any kind of understeer, you can just stomp the throttle and get the car back into rotation, or if you're at the max scrub radius, the maximum slip angle of the tires, you can just keep rotating the wheel and get the car into rotation. Again, something we wouldn't recommend in real life, or probably most other sim racing titles.
I've never really enjoyed AMS2, if I'm honest. There have been a couple of scenarios where it's been fun, like in VR, with certain cars at certain circuits, but that's more just the immersion of the game. The actual physics, the actual driving, I've never really got a hold of and never really enjoyed too much. And even though there have been some physics upgrades done to the game, I still don't really feel that now. I still feel like the game is not quite there yet in terms of simulation value.
One day, you're gonna have to teach me how to say something like that on camera without getting crucified in the comment sections. Props.
The couple laps I've driven off camera to sort of prepare for the video, it feels simultaneously too hard, too stiff and too soft at the same time, and I can't really explain to you why. You see the car skips around a lot, but if you soften it up it becomes this wallowy mess.
The reboundy car behavior, the bouncy castle effect has been a main complaint of the community ever since AMS2 came out. It's something that's obviously held over from the Madness engine. It was a big part of Project Cars 2, though Reza have made the cars behave way more predictably and normally than you might have seen across the wide breadth of content in Project Cars 2. The cars are still too bouncy, they're still too weird, and actually when I did my recent Nürburgring video, when I went over some of those curbs that I've actually gone over in real life, the fact that I was in a GT car which had way stiffer suspension than even the track spec cars I was in, it just bounced way too much. It just made no sense. There's a lot there still to be dialed in.
These cars don't really move around that much in real life. They're quite planted, you know. That's how they make them go fast. But this thing feels like it's always kind of moving around. It's always skipping over the tarmac. Like the tires are almost not connected to the surface. I can't really explain it.
It's almost like the opposite problem of ACC. So when ACC first came out, everything felt super hard, super static. It was either full grip or no grip. There was kind of no play on the limit. The damper behavior was super firm and bizarre, and the cars had these very broken movements. AMS2 and the Madness engine is just completely in the opposite direction. There's almost too much bounciness, too much happening that's just kind of flopping around at any point in time. I wish we could just meet in the middle somewhere.
A lot of the comparisons I'm making here, I'm sort of comparing them to the iRacing LMP2, because right now I think that's probably one of the best LMP2s, one of the best prototypes you can drive in sim racing. And this, the DPI, which is meant to be a bit quicker than the LMP2.
Because it's a channel rule that I can't say anything positive about iRacing, I'm just going to let that one be.
Look at this toe, mate. AI getting a bit bunched up. Take advantage of that. Goodbye, lads. Straight line driving. That's what I specialise in.
Me too. Give me more horsepower and I'll win 90% of the time, 5% of the time.
No, this is why I never really play it that much, because I find that I just start picking holes in it when really what I want to do is sit down and enjoy it.
Yes, and it's why I've instituted a rule for myself not to stream AMS2 anymore, because I've tried to go in and just enjoy it, but every time I get in, I start to poke the holes. I immediately get bashed by the AI, or I experience these really bizarre grip behaviors at the limits that you keep alluding to, and it's very difficult to stay in a positive mind frame unless you go into it specifically saying, hey look, I'm going into this to have fun as if I would be in a game like GT Sport or Forza. If I don't think of it as a sim, I can just kind of enjoy the experience, which is kind of ironically what I did over the last week with these new videos.
I do wonder how much of this could be fixed with setup, the way this car handles, but then the question I'd be saying is, why do we not have these baseline setups in place? You know, because not everyone has setup knowledge.
Because it's our job as gamers to take on another full-time job and learn how to set up cars across a multitude of different physics frameworks across different sim racing titles, obviously.
Again, does look good at night, this game, but you have to ask yourself, was this worth all the hype? Having something that looks pretty but ultimately doesn't really deliver. You know, I'd say in some circumstances, and you might crucify me for this, but when I played F1 2021 the other week, it felt more predictable than this.
Seriously, how you get away with saying this stuff without being crucified in the comments is a skill you have to teach me, mate. Seriously, I will pay good money for this.
But it's still fun. You know, I've got to give it that. It is still fun. Maybe that's just what you need, just a bit of fun sometimes. Not everything has to be super duper serious.
Yes, it definitely is still fun, especially if you know what to focus on in AMS2. I think the biggest thing overshadowing it is the fact that it's Reza developing it, the fact that it's known as coming from a full-on hardcore simulator. If it accepted the title of being a simcade-ish kind of game and marketed itself to a slightly broader audience, or like a transitionary title like Project Cars 2 was, I think it'd do fantastically, because it's so immersive. There are elements about it that are so engaging and so fun, so long as you try and forget about the fact that you're driving a real car.
AMS2, Racing USA pack. Is it a game changer? No, not really. In my opinion anyway.
In mine too. It was a really big update. The cars are drivable now, whereas once, in my opinion, they weren't. It's a really good step in the right direction, but game changer, no.
I think they're making good progress still, but that always seems to be what I hear about AMS2. Oh, they're coming along, it's making good progress, but I don't know. What are you paying for? Are you paying for a beta to be a part of, or are you paying for a finished game?
I thought the same thing for the longest time as well, but I try and put a pin in this now because of ACC's story. Now, if ACC still drove like it did on release, I think it would be currently the worst modern sim around. The fact that they're able to transform it so much in such a relatively short period of time gives me hope that if Reza do really just focus on dialing in that Madness engine, then maybe one day we'll see a sim come of all this. One thing you can say about the Madness engine is that it's tremendously ambitious. There's so much happening under the hood, almost too much, to a point where every developer that's tried to dial it in hasn't really succeeded so far, and I hate the idea of penalizing somebody for ambition.
So then you have to think, what's left? What is there left of AMS2? Cool car list, cool track list. Some cars still decent, some cars still feel awful.
Yes, it's hugely hit and miss, and that's going to be one of the ongoing problems with AMS2, I think, just because of the wide spread of content that they have. It's just what they've decided to bite off, and I mean, they're going to have to chew on that for the next couple of years. The advantage of something that's hyper-focused like ACC, even though people complain about lack of content, is that they can really dial it in. They can get in there with the manufacturers, the racing teams, get the aero maps, get the data that they need, whereas AMS2 really feels like it's flying a lot more blind.
But yeah, guys, as always, I'm very much interested to hear your opinions.
I'm glad, because I guess you've heard a lot of my opinions here. Look, for the most part, it's good to take stock of where we are. AMS2 currently is becoming progressively more drivable, which is really, really cool. It's making it easier to jump in and just enjoy and have fun. And it's obviously resurged the community. I've noticed through the polling that we've done, through people behind the scenes in sim racing that I've spoken to, there's been a huge surge of interest in AMS2 again, ever since the new 1.2 update, and that's an amazing thing. We all want to see sim racing ultimately improve, and I think we all want to see Reza succeed, irrespective of where we are on the side of this, I guess, debate, if you will be, about the simulation aspects of AMS2.
AMS2 for me is still not a sim that I want to put a lot of time into, because I don't think I'll really get much out of it that is rewarding. But for things like that, just to jump in and just experience what it might be like to drive a Daytona in day and night, this still does this really damn well. So
ditto, but again, the very same thing, for me at least, happened with ACC, but it was those incremental improvements over a vast span of time that just took it from something that was completely undrivable to arguably the king of GT sims on the market right now. So, you know, the sky is the limit. It really depends on however much they can dig into Madness and really get out of it. I feel like the core framework has to be there. The only thing I worry about is that intrinsic bouncy behavior that we've never really seen dialed out of Madness before, but if anyone can do it, I'm sure Reza can. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed my low-hanging fruit response video, one of the first, well, I think the very first legitimate one I've ever done. I didn't do it lightly, it just seemed like the right topic at the right time. Jimmy, if by some fluke of fate you watch this, nothing but love. Your channel was actually one of the first things that got me into sim racing in the first place. I think we're probably in agreement about 99% of all the things that you mentioned in that video anyway. It's probably just an adjustment of where or how one looks at this. You either look at it as something that's full of promise and potential, or something that's currently misdelivered. Both are valid, just kind of depends on how you want to perceive it. Anyway guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with future sim racing news and reviews, and if you want to join and support the channel, there's a join button down below which you can help us out in future events. Of course, make sure to check out our SGP community, again linked down below. They've just added Oceanic servers and I'm so keen to start running ACC events. I know a lot of you are keen for AMS2 events, so we'll start planning those when the platform starts to support them over the coming months. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.